Welcome. In front of me I have the ZTE Axon 30, and today I'll go over unboxing along with a quick overview. So before I get started, I will mention this phone comes at a fairly competitive price of about $500. Though keep in mind this isn't necessarily a US phone, so dollars aren't the defining value factor here. The reason I mention this is because right now dollar, at least at the point of recording this, is absolutely ridiculously high. So this doesn't really change it, for instance, for me. So it doesn't make this device cost significantly more as any other device would right now. For instance, any device that would be released obviously in US. So anyway, let's just pop it straight open. Now from what I've seen, because I just briefly looked at the spec sheet, this device is pretty nice for the price that it comes at. Now I mentioned the device comes at about $500 or euros, though I think it might be closer to something like a 1,000, maybe a little bit less, like 800. Let me quickly make sure. So I'm gonna quickly check what's the, so that would be probably like 800. So it's marketed as a bit cheaper than it actually sells, at least in my region. So my region, Poland specifically, it comes at below $800, so probably like 700 to be really precise with this. Anyway, right here we get the phone. Now the package has some heft to it, so I'm assuming we have a bunch of goodies in here. Looks like we might have a case. Yep, we do have a case. And damn, that seems like a very sturdy rigid case right here, made out of plastic. Pretty thick. We do have some paperwork. Anyway, I'm just gonna eat that to the side. Now here we get a charger, something that some people might forget that actually gets included with the devices. And this looks to be a pretty decent charger. Let's see exactly what it is. So it's a 65-watt charger. So it is a decent charger. And we get additionally earbuds, which are just a normal headphone jack. You can see it right here. What else we get? Oh, and we get an adapter for them, so you can plug them in. And then here we get just a charging cable and empty spot. Now charger, or charging cable precisely, is Type C to Type C cable, so yeah. Now let's move that to the side. Damn, this phone is huge actually. And I'm not exactly sure. It looks like it might actually have a under display camera, but I might be wrong about this. It looks a little bit weird. And I have no idea about this device, what are its selling points actually. So I just quickly look at, oh yep, under display camera. No denying it. And to be honest, unlike the actual Samsung, you don't get to see pixels on here. I mean, I guess you kind of do, but gee, they're minuscule compared to what Fold 4, for instance, has. Anyway, I'm gonna quickly go through the setup just so we can later on look at the under display camera a little bit closer and see how it affects it with different backgrounds. But while I'm going through the setup, I'm gonna quickly go over the actual display specs. So this is rocking a massive 6.9-inch display. The resolution of this display is a little bit more standard, which is 1080p by 2460. So just a typical full HD resolution. The device has an AMOLED display along with support for 1 billion colors and 120 Hz refresh rate. So by all means, it's I would say a fairly decent display. The resolution right here might be a little bit just weird considering it is rocking a massive display, but the resolution is just Full HD. But still, honestly, looking at it right now, I don't really see any pixelations. And damn, that camera looks even, or under display camera looks even better when you have a darker image. So on a white background you can kind of see it, but looking directly, just like straight on the display, I cannot see it whatsoever. At an angle, maybe I can just catch the angle. Oh, there we go. You can kind of see this weird like squarish shape there. So you kind of do get to see it sometimes, where it just, the brightness doesn't hit as well as it does on just a normal display. So it seems more like faded. I'm not exactly sure how to describe it differently. But yeah, there are just some angles where you get to see the lens itself under the display, though it's not as annoying as it was on Samsung. The reason why I'm bringing up Samsung constantly is because their Fold is one of those phones that has under display sensor, but you can see it right now. It reflects light from the sensor itself, and like right now it's worse than if there wouldn't be any sensor. This kind of like under display that they have right here is not the greatest, and I've been using this phone for past like month right now, and I can tell you this under display sensor is absolutely annoying. When you get some light shining onto it, it just completely disappears. It's not like there's an under display sensor, it's like there's a selfie there, and it's literally blasting you with like brightness because it reflects the light. Here I can't even I barely can see the area where this is, and it doesn't reflect light. So that is massive bonus right here, and obviously it looks way better. Anyway, moving on, we have an 80% screen to body ratio, but because the phone is so big, this isn't as like noticeable. So it seems like the bezels are, the screen to body ratio is a little bit higher than 80%, but it still looks nice. Now we have a 400 pixels per inch, which is actually higher than I expected for the actual 1080p display at this size, but whatever. It's running Android 11 with macOS 11, as you also seen when I booted it up. Now, the cost saving here that you probably would expect were taken to achieve this kind of price tag is primarily, I would probably expect it in processor, which is running a Snapdragon 870. It is a 5G chipset, but it's obviously not like the flagship grade. It's not the top of the line. So yeah, it's a little bit dated. And this device was released actually a year ago, I guess. So 2021, July 27th. Actually, it's going to be closer to like 2 years, not too long. But yeah, so even if we consider the fact that this device is already like a year old at least, it still surpassed Samsung in terms of under display finger or camera, which, oh my gosh. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because, let me just kind of bring it back up. This is a phone that costs roughly about $600. This is a device that costs more than twice, $1,800. Now, okay, it has flagship processor and under display camera, but if we compare it to another foldable device, even from Samsung, which costs roughly $1,000, you're not getting twice as much phone here. You're not getting two processors, you're not getting basically double anything apart from maybe these screens. But trust me, it's Samsung screens, and they're not gonna cost you $800. And yet, even with that, they couldn't make the freaking camera look good under display. Like, what the hell is this? While some ZTE device managed to make it in the second generation significantly better than Samsung. It baffles me how Samsung is still at the top of their game, apparently. But anyway, let's continue on with this one. So let's move over to the cameras. So we have a quad camera setup, though I'll be honest, the camera setup here is just kind of laughable, at least at the lower we go. So the main one, which is a 64 megapixel wide sensor, will most likely be taking a pretty decent the photos. And it has also PDAF, so autofocus. We have also a 8 megapixel ultra wide, and then we get to go a little bit lower with 5 megapixel macro. Now at 5 megapixel macro should be still taking, I would say, okay macro shots, but the 2 megapixel depth is just a sticker camera. Now I'm actually curious about the 5 megapixel depth, so I'm gonna not depth to the macro, so I'm gonna check it out. There we go, macro. I just bring a keycap right here. Again, yeah, 5 megapixels, doing good enough job for a macro. So the reason why I kind of bring this up is because sometimes with phones that give you those 2 megapixel macros, when you go into photo mode and do just the 2x zoom and take the same photo, I don't think this will be the case right here, but I can try. Yeah, I can already tell you this won't compete. So this is just a 2 megapixel zoom from 64, and yeah, it doesn't really compare. So this is much more detailed in terms of like how close you can get on a small object and still retain detail. Now most of the phones that bring macro at 2 megapixels, 64 megapixel will always blow it out of the water without any kind of problem, just because 2 megapixels is a sticker camera. It's just garbage, it's dog shit. There is no reason for it to actually exist. But at the front, actually, we're gonna test it out. We have a 16 megapixel wide sensor, so let's bring my face here, which probably is not the greatest idea, but anyway. Now it's sharpening, more sharpening, there we go. So, ooh, the light there, that looks quite bad. But honestly, it does pretty decent job. They did improve obviously on the AI portion of it. Let's try one more, just not with the light in. Okay, there is some wonkiness to this photo, especially right here. Obviously, it's looking a bit softish. So yeah, I will still say the photos right here from the under display selfie come out better than they do on a $1,800 Fold. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, moving on, to some other internal specs right here. We have a 4,800 milliamp hour battery. This device is pretty slim, but it's big, so I would expect it to have a little bit bigger battery. So that's a little bit of a shame, but at least we have a really dope charger that charges at 65 watts, so this should top up your phone pretty freaking quick without any kind of problem. And what else is there to add to this device? Actually, one more thing. I'm gonna put on the case just so you can kind of see how it looks like. That didn't sound good. Ugh. Yeah, that didn't sound pleasant. That's not fun. So, there we go. Once it's on, it does have a little bit like move to it. So that might be a little bit annoying. But yeah, once it's on, obviously you have access to all your buttons. We have the bottom charging port, the speakers, and the SIM tray. SIM tray actually looks like it doubles also. Has an SD tray, which would be outstanding. Let's test it out. Yep, that's an SD tray as well. So you can pop in an SD card and expand the storage past the default one. So in here we have the option for max storage, would be 256 gigabytes of storage, but you can obviously expand it further using an SD card. Now at the very lowest end, we get 128. Now, with different storages, you have also different amount of RAMs. So the default one, like the very basic one, the lowest price probably, would be the 128 gig storage with 6 gigs of RAM. Then you can go with 8 gigs of RAM, keeping the storage the same. Then you can increase the storage, so 256 and 8 gigs, and 256 and 12 gigs of RAM. So honestly, here it really depends on what you really want. The probably 256 gigs with 8 gigs of RAM will be like the sweet spot. 12 gigs might be just an overkill, but hey, to each their own. If you want 12 gigs, go right ahead. Obviously you will need to pay a little bit more for this, but it's there if you want to. Oh, and one more thing that I'll mention, the device does get pretty bright, though I think it might get a little bit brighter outside. It is bright, but I don't think at this point, as it is at the brightest point, would be very clear or visible in direct sunlight, for instance, like during summer. But most of the phones have this kind of technique where they do boost the brightness past what you can see right now when it detects like really bright environment, though these are just temporary boosts. They won't be like on permanently. Anyway, so I think that's all there is to say about this device. It's a pretty nice device, even considering this phone was released like some time ago. It still has a really sweet under display camera, considering it's not visible at all. And right, I was about to show you this like on different backgrounds, so let's just right now gonna max out the brightness. It's gonna be a little bit too bright for the camera, but I do want to do it just so we can focus on the camera itself. And you can see it maybe just in like direct light when it's hitting it, so you can see this cutout right here. Let's open up something that has white background. There we go. Oof, that's way too bright. Come on. Now, right here, it's on the white background. I think it's easier for me to see at a specific angles, but I really need to be looking for it. Like, I am really looking for it. And the camera cannot even pick it up almost at all. I can see on my screen right here what the camera sees, and I can see just like faint differences. Like right now there is just this faint discoloration, but like it's so minuscule that in normal circumstances I'm not gonna see it whatsoever. And this is actually really nice. It's insane how good this is actually in terms of the execution right here. Now anyway, so this would conclude my little overview of this phone, and I do have to say it's a nice device. It's more towards the budget side, or mid-range I would say, with a really nice feature of having under display camera, which gives you this nice like full screen without any kind of abstractions, and that is really nice to have. And yeah, I have to say I'm pleasantly impressed with this device, and I'm pretty sure there is also a better version of this phone, like a Pro or whatever they're calling it, Max, whatever it is. So that one will probably have a better processor if that is something that you might be looking for. Now, with that being said, this would conclude my overview of this device, and if you found this very helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.